One thing we don't forget to do each and every weekday here on Morning Offering is turn to Pat and say, Pat, it's time for a chat with Pat.
Yes, and this is one of, Father
can't wait to hear
Thomas
this.
Kuffel.
Yeah.
Yes, born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He is a priest in the Diocese of Lincoln, Nebraska.
Oh, yeah.
He served as a missionary priest in Alaska for a while. He's written wonderful things.
He likes the winter weather, doesn't he?
Yeah, he would love it. And this is from the Catholic thing, The Perils of Sophistry, Sacred and Profane. Welcome, Father. How are you today?
I am well, and how are you, Pat?
Oh, doing well. Thanks again for being on the show. I love this article. So start right out by explaining sophistry. It is a word that scares people. They don't understand it. So can you explain it to us?
Sophistry is kind of rhetoricians' favorite ploy to create a desire, a change, a movement. But their arguments are either fallacious or they're half-truths. They try to make stronger arguments with their ideas than what they really are. Mm-hmm. And they also there's a certain deception because they're hiding behind something, and their intentions aren't always true. You know, it's maybe of a manipulation there to try to suck you into some idea or some change or some program that on further investigation you see there's some falsehood in it.
And it's like redefining of terms a part of that. They use words in different ways just to confuse people.
Right. Yeah, they'll use the same words. Like in my article, I quoted Pope Benedict, and he said, the word love has many meanings, and sophistry will change it down into, kind of an emotional desire, or just, kind of a romantic feeling, or a kind of a friendship of sorts. And not the idea that love is the willing of the gift of one person to another.
Yeah. So it's somebody who is purposely trying to kind of mislead people, right?
Maybe.
Okay.
Sometimes that's true. Sometimes people, they believe what they believe, and they're not seeing the other half of the truth. So it begins with someone trying to deceive, but ultimately some people just may get caught up in the movement, in the change, in the arguments, and not truly examine. So it's both, but
okay.
Ultimately the person has to really examine their conscience and examine and see if this is truly accord with what truth is.
So how does Jesus and the gospel help us clarify when we're met with this kind of with people that are what we call about that are doing sophistry, that are putting this out there?
That's a great question. It's trying to discern what Jesus has said, and this is why Paul tells us keep the traditions that have been handed on to you, whether through written or by epistle or by word, right? And so what has been said before, and then we look to what Jesus is really saying, and we have to delve deeply into the scriptures and look into the tradition of the church, and also, the tradition of philosophy, to make sure that what we're believing is truly of Christ and not some distortion of what Christ is trying to tell us.
And you make the statement that our minds are made for the truth. I love that. How would you describe that? What do you mean when you say our minds are made for the truth?
use a simple example, 2 plus 2 equals 4, our minds are at peace with that. We know that's true. If I said 2 plus 2 is maybe 4 or maybe 5, all of a sudden, our minds kind of struggle. And so when we look at something and we find how all the pieces fit together, like in a puzzle or a mosaic, and we see that this piece fits perfectly in there, all of a sudden our minds have a certain calmness, even though it might be difficult to accept that truth. But there's a calmness that comes with the truth. So we're not fighting, we're not fighting something.
I like that. I never quite saw it that way, but you're right. Psychology talks about cognitive dissonance, that idea that it doesn't make sense to me, and there's an unsettledness. So when you're really seeking truth, and when you clutch it, then there would be a settledness. That makes all kinds of sense. So you also talk about this idea of prayer, of bringing things, obviously, because truth obviously is the most important thing. If we're meant to grasp it, and you say suffering also tests the truth. So can you tell us a little bit about how suffering tests the truth, and then bring us home with that idea of how prayer helps us when we're kind of combating this whole idea of half-truths?
Yeah, well, Jesus tells us in the last discourse, at the Last Supper, says that the Spirit of truth will come and guide you. So the truth sets us free, he also says. And, truth is not just observable always. It's not just natural. There's also a supernatural truth, like as Pope Leo was talking in Lebanon here, Jesus is both God and man. I mean, that's a supernatural truth that we just won't grasp without prayer. Mm-hmm. And when we start to pray, as Paul tells us, it seeks for the truth. It longs for the truth. And when we have that truth, there's a kind of a, what would you call it? A harmony, and and that's part of truth, as St. Thomas Aquinas tells us. There's a harmony, and there's a clarity, and there's an integrity with truth, and and if Jesus Christ is truth, our minds find that truth, and it keeps our hearts and minds in Christ, and so prayer leads us into the truth of Christ.
So, Father, the idea then is suffering. Does suffering test us as far as the truth is concerned? Is that a test for us?
Yeah. I mean, you take a look at in my article, I talked about the Maccabean martyrs, and also, John Paul in his encyclical Veritatis Splendor talks about how, we once we know the truth, we will adhere to it with all our heart. And when there's falsehood coming, we'll defend that truth, and that entails suffering.
Oh, Father, thank you so much. This was a wonderful article. I just recommend that everybody read it, especially in our day and age. Thanks for being with us today.
You're most welcome.